Imagine the terror. A mountain lion, a ghost of the Rockies, running not from danger, but towards it. This isn't Africa. This is a quiet suburban town in Colorado. When she appeared at the community clinic, the town stood still. But the biggest shock was not the giant cat, but the tiny, fragile cargo clenched carefully in her jaws. This animal wasn't hunting. She was begging, and what followed changed a town forever. I was finishing up my 20 years of reports for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, right next door to the old community clinic. My name is John McDougall. They call me Mac. I deal with bears, coyotes, and the occasional grumpy elk, but nothing prepared me for the scream that ripped through the quiet afternoon. I looked out the window, frozen. Right in the middle of the parking lot stood a full-grown mountain lion. She was massive, maybe 150 pounds of pure muscle and instinct. And then I saw it, clutched impossibly gently. In her massive jaws was a tiny, spotted cub. Chaos erupted. People scattered, screaming, barricading themselves inside the clinic. Then the sirens arrived. Police officers, guns drawn, were shouting commands. I saw one officer, a good man, aiming a rifle. His finger was on the trigger. This was it. One wrong move, and they would shoot this mother and her cub. I sprinted out, waving my hands, screaming louder than the panicked citizens. "Don't shoot! Hold your fire!" They hesitated. I rushed toward the mountain lion, relying on 2 decades of experience. I had to convince them. If she was aggressive, we'd already be fighting for our lives. She was just standing there, waiting. That's when I saw the desperation in her amber eyes. She had come here for a reason no one could comprehend. Keep watching. The choice this mother made next will tell you everything you need to know about unconditional love. I walked forward slowly. Every survival instinct I had was screaming at me to run, but the look in her eyes held me steady. I kept my hands visible. The officers were a solid wall behind me. When I was about 10 feet away, she moved. It wasn't an attack. She simply, carefully, lowered her head and placed the tiny cub on the asphalt. Then she took 3 steps back. She gave me space. That trust, that silent transfer of hope, was one of the most powerful moments of my life. I knelt down beside the cub. It was pitifully small, maybe a week old, barely moving. It was burning up with fever and severely dehydrated. The fur was matted. I gently picked it up. The mother tensed, a low, rumbling growl deep in her chest, a warning, not a threat. She was telling me, "You are holding my life in your hands. Do not fail me." We rushed the cub inside the emergency room, the mother following, refusing to be separated, settling right outside the glass door. We worked fast. IV fluids, fever reducers. But as the vet was checking the cub's breathing, he looked up, his eyes wide. "Mac, he's crashing. We're losing him." The tiny chest stopped moving. My training took over. There was no time for complex equipment. I had to perform CPR using my fingertips. Right through the glass, the mountain lion mother was watching. She saw every movement. She saw the cub go limp. She saw my hands pressing down. She let out a roar, not of fury, but of pure, gut-wrenching grief. I could feel her breath on my skin through the barrier. One wrong squeeze, 1 minute too long, and I would be responsible for the death of her son, and she would tear through that door. I kept pushing. I was praying to every spirit of the wild I knew. Then the smallest thing happened, a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch. The cub let out a weak squeak. The vet gasped. He was breathing again. The mother outside settled down, letting out a long, guttural sigh. It was the deepest sound of relief I had ever heard. We saved the cub, but that was just the beginning. The next turn in this story will uncover a dark secret being kept just miles from our homes. Stay with me for the shocking twist. The cub stabilized, but the fight was far from over. A crime had been committed. Mountain lions do not simply wander into town. She had escaped from somewhere. The local sheriff's detective, a sharp guy named Ben, checked the town's perimeter cameras. The footage led us to a remote, abandoned ranch compound about 10 miles out, a place locally known for being a bit strange. The gates were high, topped with barbed wire. It felt like a fortress. We knew what this was, an illegal, exotic pet hoarding and trafficking operation. We had to act, but one bad move and the criminals might dispose of the evidence, meaning they'd kill the animals. Ben was setting up the warrants, but I couldn't wait. The thought of that mother, who had risked everything only for her home to be a death trap, fueled a deep, cold rage inside me. I made a choice that could have cost me my career, or worse, my life. I went in alone. I needed proof, and I needed to know the risk. I drove my truck as far as I could, then hiked through the thick ponderosa pine forest. The place reeked of filth and ammonia. The perimeter fence was old, but the razor wire was new. I found a weak spot and, with my gloves and cutters, carefully snuck inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. It wasn't just hoarding, it was a nightmare. Rows upon rows of tiny, rusted metal cages baking in the Colorado sun. Exotic animals, animals that should never have been here, were languishing. A majestic African lion, matted and starving, barely lifted his head. Nearby, a powerful Siberian tiger, its massive frame cramped into a cage too small to turn around in, paced back and forth, its eyes burning with madness. I saw a small jaguar, its ribs showing, desperately trying to drink from a dirty bucket. These weren't pets. They were prisoners. They were commodities. I felt sick. My throat tightened with pure, unadulterated rage. I pulled out my phone. I had to record everything. I was framing a shot of a tiny macaque monkey huddled in a corner. When I heard it, the crunch of gravel and a man clearing his throat, close. I froze. I ducked behind a stack of rotting plywood, adrenaline flooding my body. The man, a low-life guard with a flashlight, walked right past my hiding spot, his boots mere inches from my head. I held my breath, listening to the pounding of my own heart. He stopped, turned, and shone the beam directly at the stack of wood. I thought, this is it. They'll kill me and bury me here. No one will ever know what happened. But I clutched the phone. The proof was more important. He sighed, mumbled something about a busted lock, and walked away. I waited for 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours. Then I slipped away, my mind reeling. I had my proof. I had the inventory of their suffering. The fury I felt at the hands of these traffickers would now become the force for their downfall. I got back to my truck, my hands shaking, and radioed Ben. We go in now, full force. This is worse than we imagined. You've seen the danger, you've seen the cruelty, but you won't believe the powerful, impossible story of how that mother mountain lion actually escaped. You have to hear this next part. The raid was lightning fast. The SWAT team, the state troopers, and us, the wildlife agents, burst through the compound walls. Sirens and shouting filled the air, cutting through the silence of the remote valley. The criminals tried to flee, tried to grab weapons, but they were overpowered within seconds. It was a clean sweep. One man, the alleged ringleader, did make a move. He raced toward the cages, a small pistol in his hand. We knew his intent: to destroy the evidence, to silence the suffering forever. He was ready to execute these innocent animals. But our tactical team was better. A sniper positioned on a nearby ridge took the shot. Not at the man, but at the pistol. A clean shot, shattering the weapon just as the man's finger tightened. He fell, screaming, his evil plan neutralized without a single animal being harmed by the chaos. It was a victory for compassion, a testament to the professionalism of the forces working together. While my team and the vets began the grueling, hour-by-hour task of stabilizing the animals, Ben and his detectives got a confession from one of the lower-level accomplices. And that's when the truth about the mountain lion mother came out. She hadn't been captured recently. She had been taken months ago, illegally from her territory, brought to this compound, and kept in a tiny, filthy concrete run. She had given birth there. The cub, weak and sick from the unsanitary conditions, was fading fast. The owner saw the mother as a cash cow and the cub as a defective product. They were letting him die. The accomplice described the night before. The mother, driven mad by maternal desperation, had worked relentlessly at the flimsy padlock on her cage. She didn't use strength, she used intelligence. For hours, she manipulated the lock with her teeth and claws. Finally, with a loud snap, the lock broke. She then found the weakest spot on the perimeter fence, a hole meant for trash disposal, and squeezed through. She had traveled 10 miles through the darkest forests, across state highways, avoiding cars and people, not seeking shelter, but instinctively seeking the one thing that meant safety, the lights of a human clinic. She bypassed houses, farms, and businesses. She went straight to the place designed for healing. That mother's love, Mac realized, was stronger than her wild instinct to survive. It was the most incredible act of faith I had ever heard of. We worked tirelessly. The African lion was sedated and gently carried out on a stretcher. The tiger was given tranquilizers and moved to a transport crate. Every animal was treated, tagged, and carefully prepared for transport to accredited sanctuaries across the country. The air was no longer filled with the stench of decay, but the hope of freedom. We won the battle, but did we win the war? The reunion we've all been waiting for, the final silent thank you from the mother, is still ahead. Don't click away, because you need to see this ending. 3 long months passed. The mountain lion mother and her cub were flown to a certified huge cat sanctuary in Texas, a place where they would never see a fence smaller than 50 acres. I was busy tying up the legal ends of the case, but I needed to see them. I flew down, a small pilgrimage of the heart. When I arrived, the sanctuary director led me through the enclosure gates. The new home was a slice of paradise, tall grass, giant rocks, and cool running water. I spotted her first. The mother was sprawled out on a sun-drenched granite boulder, and next to her, no longer a pitiful, sickly creature, was the cub. He was chunky, his fur was glossy, and he was batting playfully at his mother's tail. His eyes sparkled with the curiosity and mischief of a perfectly healthy wild cat. It was pure, unadulterated joy. This was the victory. I approached the outer fence. I kept my voice low. "Hey, Mama," I called out gently. The mother, relaxed in the sun, slowly raised her head. She turned her piercing amber eyes toward me. I knew she couldn't know me in the human sense, but something in her gaze, something flickered, a flash of recognition. As I stood there watching, the sanctuary director gave me the final, crucial detail. We found the mother had been darted with a heavy tranquilizer a few months before the cub was born, likely during her initial capture. She had a massive internal infection and was extremely weak. The truth is, Mac, she was dying when she came to you. She wasn't just saving her cub. She was using the last of her strength to ensure her cub survived her. This was the twist. The mother risked not just capture, but death to reach the hospital. The staff prepared to move the mother to a separate enclosure for a final health check. They gave her a light sedative. As the drug began to take effect, she lay down, her head heavy. I knelt by the transport crate one last time. She looked at me, her eyes fading just a little. There was no growl, no tension. She slowly, deliberately stretched her neck forward and gently nuzzled her forehead against the thick metal bars of the cage, directly facing me. It was the same gesture a domesticated cat uses to show affection, a silent press, a tiny, almost imperceptible huff of air, a final deep breath. It was the mountain lion's final, quiet, perfect thank you. She collapsed gently into sleep, safe beside her healthy son. I flew home knowing one fundamental truth. A mother's love is the most powerful force on earth. It transcends species, it breaks locks, it conquers fear, it can turn a wild beast into a brave supplicant, and it gave that tiny, fragile cub a whole new life. This story of compassion, desperation, and unbelievable faith is one that should never be forgotten. If you were moved by the courage of this mother, please hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments below. What animal do you think shows the fiercest love? We have so many more incredible rescue stories coming soon. Thank you for watching.